Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Multispeed Technologies, the Ask Noah show starts right now. This is the show where we came to do all the things on Linux they said couldn't be done and take your questions on how to do the same. The phone lines are open this hour to be a part of the program. It is a free call, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624, or send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. My name is Noah Jalaya. I am your host. Delighted to be here with you as another episode of the Ask Noah Show kicks off this hour. Joining me, my co-host, Mr. Steve Ovens. Welcome in, sir.
Good evening, Noah. You know, I find that the more that I have to use AI at work, the more work I have to do. It doesn't give me less work. I end up having more work, and I end up having more split attention. So I end up doing 2 or 3 things at the same time, which I'm generally terrible at.
You know what's interesting about that? Didn't we have, am I misremembering, or did we have like kind of an off-the-cuff conversation in the car while we were at self-driving around where you were like, man, do you remember the good old days where code was compiling and like you just couldn't use your computer because code was compiling, so what am I to do? And now that excuse kind of went away until AI came onto the scene. And then it's like, well, the work's getting done anyway. So if I step away here for a second, it's not going to, nothing's going to,
Yeah. I mean, on the flip side, though, I'm not skilled enough to like give it work for days on end. So it turns out that no work was getting done while I was at self.
Here's the thing. Well, days, yeah, I suppose that's probably a bit of an exaggeration. But I would tell you that there's nobody that's a good multitasker. Right, like that's a misnomer. We know, like everything we've studied about human behaviors and that sort of thing tells us that human factors, you can do one thing really well at a time. If you try to do multiple things, there's a context penalty for switching between the things, and so you're actually less efficient at both things.
That's true, and what actually is happening is you're not multitasking. We are still single-threaded, despite all of what we like to say. So it's more like Windows back in the old days. Remember when Windows first? Maybe you're not old enough to remember.
I remember Windows 3.1 on up. So
Well, so when Windows first came out, the idea that there was a window, it consumed everything. There was no tabbing between it. The window in Windows was the thing it did, and so it just was like. It was a DOS process that was wrapped in a window, and it ate the whole thing. And that's still what humans are. It's like we're still that single-threaded process. We just think we're better at switching between them.
Tell me, here's a reference that might make some sense and analogy that might fit. Do you remember when we had it was Intel Xeons were true 64-bit processors? But then you had other processors that they were quote unquote 64 bits, but they weren't really 64 bits. It was doing 32 bits at a time. Mm-hmm. And when you had to go to a Xeon if you wanted the real, is that maybe a good drop-in analogy for human behavior? Like we don't have true Xeon brains. We can process 32 bits at a time. You just got to pick which 32 you're going to process.
Yeah. I think even more broadly stated, some of us are just more easily distracted and therefore hop from thing to thing much more naturally.
I can't relate. So, should we do some feedback?
Let's do it.
Our first email comes in from Mike. Mike writes in and says, "Hi, Noah and Steve. I purchased a Reolink Wi-Fi doorbell camera a few months back. It runs off the existing 18 or 24 volt transform, but unfortunately doesn't keep the existing doorbell chime working. I was able to connect it directly via RTSP into Frigate and keep the two-way talk audio working. The wireless siren and charm it comes with is disconnected after the first button press and has never worked again. So we kept missing people at the door. I just want to stop right there, Steve. So this guy's telling me that he bought a doorbell that doesn't function as a doorbell. It just works as a camera, but it's stopped working as a doorbell.
I mean, we've all done that, haven't we? Bought something that doesn't function as the thing we bought it as.
I had an idea to connect it into Home Assistant and use text-to-speech to announce that somebody's at the door and which door they're at. Since then, it's been working flawlessly. I'm now considering adding facial recognition so it can announce specific people by name when they arrive. The stream drops frames occasionally, but overall, the Wi-Fi RTSP setup works great, and I didn't have to run any new wiring or cut into my brick face home. Love the show. Keep it up. Best regards, Mike. So, Steve, I think the real success story here is Home Assistant is awesome and can work around all sorts of little tiny problems.
I mean, it is the glue that enables you to use less than ideal either hardware or situations together.
You know, the other thing, so what do you make of he wants to use facial recognition for somebody at the door? Is that a, hey, as long as it's local, I can get behind it?
I mean, it's your house as long as I know that it's happening, because presumably you're only going to be able to facially recognize someone that you has been over quite a bit. And I would hope that that would be something that they would tell people, like, hey, you walk on my premises, I'm doing like facial recognition.
Mm-hmm. What would you do? And let me preface this by saying, on the things that you have to worry about with your friend Noah, I promise you, this isn't anywhere on the list. The Chalaya household will never, mark my words, will never, mark the tape, will never be doing facial recognition. But that said, what would your approach be if you had a friend and they're like, yeah, I do facial recognition on my property? Is that well, great, awesome. Let's hang out somewhere other than your house.
Depends on where it was and like how much I thought I could fool it, because I might show up with one of those like mosquito meshes or something like that. Like you'd still know it was me, but not because you did the facial recognition.
Do you remember? Do you remember the guy who he racked up? It was in Arizona, and he had 37 photo tickets, and he got out of the 37 photo tickets at $181.50 a year, and he took it to they took it to court, and in total I think it was $6,700 in fines, and he got out of it because he had a monkey mask on, and the police were unable to prove in court that it was him that was driving the thing. And so they said, because they can't prove he was operating the vehicle, you have to identify the driver. It's not a valid ticket.
I mean, I think that's reasonable. I think he found a way around the system, and that's unfortunate, but it's also reasonable that turns out you actually have to know it's the person in order to, penalize the person.
Yeah.
I feel like that's reasonable.
Yep. So he got out of the ticket, and I thought that was pretty clever. So so maybe that's what you do, Steve. You just get yourself a monkey mask and then just go around,
Exactly. He'll know it's me, but the system won't.
Right. I think for me, if I found out, like I have family members that do the Ring thing and it does the license plate recognition and all that, and I literally park on the street because I'm not down with that. But I think you could potentially get me to do it if somebody went to the trouble of setting local up at their house and kept the data in their house and was doing all of that. I feel like I could potentially get to the point where I would be okay with it if I trusted the person, if all the stars aligned. But man, I tell you what, was it you that said, you got to be really careful with facial recognition because, like, what are you going to do? Change your face?
Exactly. Yep. Same thing with any of the biometrics. Is like, once you start using biometrics as the thing that unlocks things, like you can't rotate those.
Our second email comes in from John. John says, regarding doorbells, I think it was a topic. I thought I would add something that I found. You can reuse a single pair cable for other uses. 10-based T1L. It's a standard that provides half duplex 10 megabits per second, which is good enough for a security doorbell camera, even if it supports PoE in the standard. All of these low data rates, even uncategorized, unshielded, untwisted pairs should suffice. I linked the converters I found online, but can't vouch for them. And then he links to a company called Omnitron, that has this media converter single pair for Ethernet single pair converter. So, Steve, here is my question, and I understand that you don't own these. I understand that this isn't your recommendation. This is the recommendation of John. But I guess my question is it your understanding from looking at these photos that this is you need one of these at each end, so you'd have to find some way to bury one of those things in the wall in order to get the Ethernet? Because that seems like that could be potentially a challenge if you got like, a brick face wall and you got a little hole in there. You'd have to be kind of a big hole to shove that in.
I mean, that's the way that converters usually work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have no idea, but that's what I would think, is that you, just like PoE, you have to have something on both ends that is going to receive and split the power out from the data. And this, I don't think, is any different.
So it is probably a solution, but we would need, but there's a caveat in that you would need to, we would have to do it in such a way where you can fit those in the wall.
I mean, I would almost be more likely to try and pull Ethernet back by tying it to the wire and seeing if I couldn't pull it through.
Yeah. If you have access on both ends and you can get to your basement from below, like it's not finished or something, I think that's an option. I think that if the cable does any sort of twists or turns, I think that there's a good chance you just lose the cable in the wall. But hey, I appreciate it though, John. This is really great, and I was telling Steve before the show, this is a trick up my sleeve I didn't previously have. XHat writes in and says, "Hi Noah and Steve, I have a Linovision USA, which is also known as the Hinovision Solutions LLC. The particular model is," and then he gives a particular model. "I have a question for you guys. Do you happen to know if my data is being sent to China? And could you recommend the components that I need to build out a wired home camera system? Specifically, I'm interested in what software I would use. I absolutely love your podcast. Thanks, XHat." So, Steve, if you woke up and... so first of all, let's start here. This was a concern for you when you first put up your cameras. The very first thing you did is said, to make sure they're not going to get out to China. How'd you do that?
I blocked them at the firewall. No outgoing traffic. So I have a firewall group that has those cameras in them, and then I put a block list very high up the list and said no internet traffic.
And so coming out on the other side of it, then they just can't get to the internet. Then that seems like that could be a problem, because now they're not getting updates, aren't they?
Well, except that Home Assistant has this nice integration with Reolink, and I get the Home Assistant ping saying, hey, you've got an update, and Home Assistant manages it. So
wait a minute. The cameras are still getting updated, but Home Assistant is yet again the glue that's putting everything together. So Home Assistant, we trust it. So it's allowed to go out to the internet and pull the update down, and then it can talk directly to the cameras and update them. So the cameras might be, for all we know, trying to hammer home to China. It doesn't matter, because the only thing they can get to is Home Assistant. Home Assistant becomes the nice little gatekeeper that says, here, I'll get you the information that you need and I'll push it down. You don't have to worry about that big old bad internet. I'll filter that for you.
Yep, exactly.
I love that. If you have questions, please write into the show. If you hear something, a topic that's of interest, please write in live@asknoahshow.com. The reality is that the show is only possible because of what you do. And if you don't ask us the questions or you don't provide the feedback on things, Steve and I will do our absolute level best. And there's a whole bunch of things that we will nerd out about, but we think the best content comes from you. So as you're walking through your challenge, you think about even if it's one of those things that are like, it's too hard to type out, I'll figure it out myself and all the things. I would encourage you to consider the fact that you are depriving the other people that are going to wind up in that same boat. And as Steve continues to turn the robots loose on the show, and it continues to archive and transcribe and do all of the things, there's going to be opportunities for us like never before to be able to document what works for other people and then put that into an easy to use place where people can come and kind of figure out the solutions to their problems. So for all of that, please write in at live@asknoahshow.com, or the best thing you can do, give us a call while we're on the air, 6 p.m. Central at asknoahshow.com. So, Steve, there has been a story about the Fox Corporation, which has acquired the platform Roku in a $22 billion deal. The company sold on June 15th. That cash and stock deal was approved by the board of directors and now gives Fox access to the global footprint that includes Roku devices and services, which reach 100 million households and generate about $145 billion of hours of engagement each year. So if you were explaining this to me like I'm 5, what has Fox done and what does this mean for Roku?
Is a series of little devices that are relatively cheap. Well, actually, they are very cheap and they're ubiquitous. You can probably walk into most stores in your city and buy one, from Best Buy to, I don't know if you've got a Target or a Walmart. All of the places have carried Roku in the past or continue to. So they're cheap, they're ubiquitous. They have their own little store. They're not really performant, but that's not really where their goal is. Their goal is to just stream video appropriate, like at a reasonable pace. And so you can connect to all of the services you'd think, as well as they have Plex and Jellyfin apps. And you can also optionally sideload Kodi, although that takes a little bit of technical knowledge. But the point is that they are popular is the wrong word. I'll go back with ubiquitous, because they're cheap and you can just go down the street and get them. So lots of people end up on forums and stuff saying, hey, what can I do with this thing? So because of that, they're a pretty well-known, well-understood device.
So this is kind of making streaming available to the masses. I can appreciate that to a degree. I guess the part that I was not really aware of that you have kind of clued me into is these are popular with self-hosters. I would have thought that self-hosters would want the least amount of friction to doing to installing apps and doing those things. And I guess the barrier, it sounds like, or the reason is, it sounds like they're not like the Amazon Fire Stick, which puts in that little, what do they call it, an e-fuse. And if you try to sideload a thing, the whole thing burns up. So is the idea that, well, at least it's not that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some of that. And again, I'm hesitant to say popular because they're not like buying an NVIDIA Shield or things of that nature. They're everywhere. They're cheap. And because of that, there's lots of guides for everything you can do. And generally speaking, if you're buying a streaming stick, you're not trying to buy a computer. So you're trying to run Kodi or Jellyfin or Plex and all of the regular streaming services that you may subscribe to. And for that, you walk down the store and I don't know, the last time I looked, the lowest end one was like $30 or $35, and they scale up with different features and stuff like that. So I just thought it was notable because it's a brand that people recognize. So my first encounter with the Roku was my dad brought one home. I had never heard of it before that, and he brought it home and plugged it into the TV for himself and, got online and did all of the things. And it did well enough until it aged itself out. And I think he went and got another. But the point of that is that he just went down to Best Buy and bought a thing and plugged it in, and away he went. And at the time I was running Plex, so I hooked him up to the Plex server and away he went.
What does it mean that Fox bought these guys out? Does that mean that presumably this is going to be less? We're gonna have less of an ability to put other apps on it?
I don't even know. I can't even say why Fox would really be interested in this, other than the ubiquity and maybe putting their app front and center. Like most, as far as I know, like CNN and MSNBC and all those places, they don't have their own hardware. So I'm not exactly sure what the angle here is. But I mean, the other notable thing here I thought was interesting was $22 billion. Red Hat was bought for $34 billion. So not a whole heck of a lot less than that for an entire software company that arguably runs a huge chunk of the internet, and definitely like the NASDAQ and all of that sort of stuff. So very interesting that the $22 billion for Roku. I have no idea. Not a financial analyst, but that surprises me.
So I will tell you a short story. There's a friend of mine, and he is in his upper 60s, early 70s, and he is not technical at all. He's very untechnical, to the point that up until 2-3 years ago, he didn't have internet, he didn't have a laptop, he didn't have any of that. Just didn't, right? So he calls me one day and he says, Noah, I am going to join the 21st century. I'm going to buy a laptop. I'm going to get internet. I'm going to do all the things. Can you help me? To which I said, yes, I'd be happy to. So I go over to his house. I get a laptop set up for him. We get all the things going. As part of that, he signs up for an internet package. And prior to that, he had regular cable TV, like the coax cable that comes in, right? And the internet company tells him, and you would recognize the name because I believe you and I share the same ISP. The internet company tells him, we no longer offer coaxial cable. In fact, we've gone away from it entirely, and we now come in and we do IPTV. So we bring you a little box and we plug it in, and that's going to be your new TV service. Now, some backstory. this ISP slash cable company already has coax to all of these houses. So they have perfect TV or near perfect TV to every one of these properties. So they go to this guy's house who for 20 some years or 30 some years has had coax TV and it's worked flawlessly from this company. And they're going to quote unquote upgrade him to this IPTV thing. So they bring the cheapest Chinese streamy box thing I think I've ever seen in my life. And they plug it in and they tell him, now here's the thing. When you go to watch a hockey game, you might see the game from time to time might stop and the word buffering might appear on the screen. If that happens, that's not a problem. That is supposed to be that way. It just means a lot of people are watching the game. You just wait a little bit and then it will come back. If you don't want to deal with that, what you can do is just put it on the, pre-record thing or whatever and let the first 15 or 20 minutes of the game play and then don't watch it live. Watch it on like a 15-minute delay and that should eliminate the problem. So my jaw is starting to... Right, exactly. You take this perfectly working thing and you give them a less solution, then tell them this is to be expected and don't bother calling us because there's nothing we can do about it, right? So my jaw on the way down to the floor already, then the guy says, I kid you not, oh, by the way, this box that you're paying $120 a month for our service also has the ability to run Netflix and Hulu and YouTube TV and all of these other things. So you can go ahead and feel free to install. And all I could think about was you ripped out the perfectly good working wire that was there. You replaced it with this admittedly second-rate box. And now you just told him how to install your competition onto the box, thereby making you irrelevant. What are you doing? And so in the same way that I just was perplexed that this is what the ISP would do, that this is what the cable TV would do, that this is what we're going to settle for, it somewhat perplexed me. Why doesn't Fox just release an app? What do they need to buy anything from Roku? Release your app, go put the thing out, and if you really want a little stick to plug it to run your app on, go sell the Fox stick or whatever. Why in the world would they buy a thing that already exists that has all of their competition on it? It boggles the mind. I can't quite get my head wrapped around the motivation for the story and the motivation for doing this. It just doesn't really make any sense to me.
I have no idea, but somebody out there, I mean, let's be fair. Someone out there thinks that this is a good idea to the point where a board approved $22 billion, right? So
absolutely.
There was some business case that made sense to enough people. So just something I'm not seeing, I guess.
I don't disagree with you. I'd just be interested to know what that is. So this provided an interesting opportunity in the pre-show to talk about what really constitutes a good TV streaming appliance. We started to kind of wander the room. So Steve, what are you using for a TV stream device these days?
You will pull the NVIDIA Shield out of my cold, dead hands.
Oh, buddy, I'm so happy to hear that. What do you like about it? Why is that the thing you've settled on? And what were some of the problems that you encountered and how did you solve them?
So it is very performant still. It still gets updates. I had the original NVIDIA Shield with the controller and stuff like that, and it finally died. Well, I couldn't say whether it died or the plug died, but I wasn't willing to try playing with the different parts because to buy just plug alone was quite expensive to the point because you can't buy this new anymore. When I went online, the plug was almost as expensive as buying a new to me NVIDIA Shield. So that's what I did. And I wanted to test the plug, but I also didn't want to fry the one that I just bought that I knew was working. So I have a plug and an NVIDIA Shield and not sure which ones work anymore. So I went to eBay and I'm using a new to me. The downside for the NVIDIA Shield is that they, by default, do a level of advertising behind all of the icons on the screen. Very similar, like you've seen that when, I don't know, Netflix or whatever is playing a trailer behind all of the stuff as you're scrolling around. It kind of does something like that for ads. It's kind of annoying. But since it's Android, you can replace the launcher, which I did. Of course, shame on me. I don't remember what the launcher is. I think it's called Projectivity. I think it's called the Projectivity launcher. And when you replace the launcher, it's bare bones. Like, it just simply has a list of the icons that I need and a picture in the background, and that's all that I want from it.
So the most annoying thing, I, like you, have Android TV all throughout my house. The most annoying thing by far is that it constantly ejects me out of Kodi and puts me back to their stupid launcher screen. I never really want to leave Kodi. It's really the only app I use on there. And so I open it, and then to add insult to injury, I'm watching a movie or TV show or whatever, and I get up in the morning, and so I go to turn it off, and so I turn the NVIDIA Shield. I don't stop it or whatever. I just turn it off, and then I turn the TV on. When I get home at night, I turn the NVIDIA Shield back on. It ejects me out of Kodi, so it decides that just can't be the thing that comes back to the front. Behind the player, it's still playing the video, so I can still hear it. I just can't see the stupid thing, and I have to go back into Kodi, which has just been, I don't know, it really irritates me. So I have tried to get away from the NVIDIA Shield. I've been unsuccessful. I would say the closest I've gotten to is a company called OSMC, which makes something called the Vero. And essentially, they invested 5 years in designing the Vero from scratch, and they have a new flagship called the Vero V, or the Vero 5. It's a future-proof design like its predecessor. It can play back 4K content. It adds support for new content, or to new codecs such as AV1. And essentially, it is a purpose-built box specifically around Kodi. Now, they have their own little skin on top of Kodi, but essentially does everything through this little box. So it was a really great little thing. I have the Vero 4K, and I really, really liked it. There were a couple of little tiny minor things that I'm hoping they fixed in the Vero 5. I've not yet ordered the Vero 5. It's £149 and available for free and worldwide shipping. But you can check them out and learn more at osmc.tv. Now, here's the thing that I'm comparing that with. The thing that has its competition is, and Steve, I think you have some of these floating around your house. You know, all these new little micro PCs. What do you think about taking like an Intel NUC or a B-Link or whatever and running something like LibreElect on it, which is essentially an operating system specifically designed to run Kodi?
So if I was going to do that, I'm not sure what benefit that gets me over a minimal Linux install that boots full screen into Kodi already. That way, in the event that one of the plugins doesn't work in Kodi particularly well and you need to drop out to a web browser or something, you have that ability.
Okay. So it's a function of you. If you're going to put a PC, you want the full power of a PC, and you'd feel like it's almost kind of nerfing yourself to limit yourself to just Kodi.
Yeah, I'm curious legitimately what the use case is. Now, if you're running like a Raspberry Pi, which was where I understood LibreElect's primary target user base was, and that's all you were going to do, because let's be honest, the Raspberry Pi was not good at running a browser. Things have changed with the 4 and the 5, but previous to that, it was a pretty poor experience where LibreElect ran very well. So in that use case, it made sense. But outside of that, if I was going to have an actual computer that had some, well, honestly, any modern thing that you can buy today, unless you're specifically going to buy really old hardware, will be able to run Kodi and a web browser. Maybe only one tab in a web browser, but still.
Have you had any hands-on with the Pi 5?
I have not. I still have a bunch of Pi 4s that I use all the time, but no Pi 5.
So I don't own one, but there was one at Micro Center, actually when we were at Self, and I went to Micro Center, and they had one on display, and I played with it. I have to tell you, from everything I had read about it and everything that I'd heard from people that had it, I was expecting this like ginormously cool, awesome, super fast, basically like a PC thing. And from that perspective, I was a little disappointed. I didn't really think it was anything to write home about. It was awesome, and it's been augmented or whatever, and that's great. But I don't know. It did not feel blazing fast. And it certainly did not, in any way mimic the responsiveness that I would get from even a low-powered PC. And so, I don't know. I guess I walked away feeling a little underwhelmed. Now, is that because it's the store display and who knows what's been done with it? Probably. Is it because maybe there are all manner of different things that are, yeah, maybe. So all of that is possible. But I don't know. I just found myself a little underwhelmed.
Maybe you'd have to compare it to the other Raspberry Pis.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think it's maybe a little better. I'm hoping that they eventually get to a point where you can buy the thing and it kind of blows you out of the water. The last device that I wanted to draw some attention to is a device called Boxy. Now, I may have incorrectly referred to this as the Boxy box on the show. This is not the original Boxy box. This is a different, basically Chinesium Android TV. But the thing that I think that is useful if you're in the market for something that plays things is it's a cheap device. It's $99 and runs the latest version of Android and largely will let you do streaming and such on your television. I have a number of these floating around a client, and I really like them. The only problem I've ever had with them is they tend to, if you leave them for a long time, you got to restart them. So you just have to be willing to turn them off and turn them back on again. Then they come back to life and they're great. If you can live with that, I think you will find these are great little devices and will give you a really great budget answer when you're looking for a way to stream your stuff and you don't want to spend the money on a full NVIDIA Shield. Fedora Silverblue. So if you haven't heard of this, this is Fedora's approach at an immutable operating system, but it's got some really interesting bells and whistles underneath the hood, and the ability to tinker under the hood means that it caught the eye of one Mr. Steve Ovens. So, Steve, tell me what it was that got you down the track of looking for anything at all, and then how you wound up on Fedora Silverblue, and what's appealing about it to you.
So, starting off by saying we had an old laptop that my wife toted around with her everywhere. It had touchscreen, you could tent it, all the things. And because of that, the hinges started to go and made the laptop kind of not useful anymore. So I happened to mention this to someone, and they very graciously were able to find another model, the exact same, and they gave it to me while I was at Self. The downside of these models is that they only have 4 gigs of RAM. For what we were using for them, that was fine, but I installed Fedora 44 on it just to see what would happen, and it was sluggish at the best. Like it was using 1.5 gigs into swap. And so I started poking around and I thought, well, I might want to let one of the kids have this, and if I'm going to do that, I probably want to put Endless on it because that's been the thing I reached for a immutable operating system. And then I thought, well, it's probably running a reasonably current version of GNOME anyways, and it's probably going to be as heavy. So what are my options? And I stumbled across Fedora Silverblue, and just for kicks, I just downloaded the actual Silverblue. So for context, there are a bunch of spins that are based on Fedora Atomic. So when you see like Fedora Silverblue or Kinoite or Onyx, or there's several others, all of those are Fedora Atomic with different desktops and, whatever their loadout is for that desktop experience. And so I grabbed Silverblue, which is the GNOME version, and it was slightly better, but it was still quite heavy. Like, it was sluggish when you open things, and it was just eating a lot of RAM. So I thought, well, I started to tinker around because, one of the things that you're supposed to be able to do is to swap between trees fairly easily, which is these are based on the RPM OS tree, which, let's just say it's a way that it splats an entire image on the device. And I went and switched the tree from Silverblue to Onyx. Now, if you look on the website, Onyx is now called Budgie, They're the same, but it used to be called Fedora Onyx, which was the budgie spin. And what I thought was really interesting is, for the first time, I kind of went, I guess I see what those Nix people are talking about when it's like you change the desktop and rebuild, and it's like the original one never existed. Because that's what happened with Fedora. It changed from a Silverblue machine into an Onyx machine, and my experience was way better. Like, Budgie is really good on resources. I think I clock in at 1.6 or 1.7 gigs of RAM, which gives me quite a bit of overhead for like launching a browser and just doing basic tasks.
So have you, so this is early in the stage, but the thing that you like is that you can crawl under there and tweak it. How are you getting in there and modifying, like, what software packages are there, that sort of thing?
It's very easy relative. So I took a look at Endless because I thought, I wonder if I can strip this out. And the answer was not very easily. I didn't want to go through and rebuild Endless myself. And so that's why I went down Fedora. With Fedora, there's a command called rpm os tree, both install and remove, and it allows you to add packages to the base image. Now, most of the people out there are going to say, well, you should be using Flatpak to augment these. But I have some specific use cases, such as I wanted to be able to install Tailscale and use it as a service and not have to figure out a way, like I did with Endless, to put the binary somewhere and then get the right permissions and then link the systemd service and relink the PIDs and all that kind of stuff. I had to really jump through a bunch of hoops with Endless. So I wanted to just have things that were baked in. I'm not going to run it like a full desktop, as in the way I would run a Fedora machine, but there are a few things that I wanted to bake in, like turning on SSH and enabling SSH keys and Tailscale, like I talked about, a few other things like that, so that even though it's immutable, it has the packages that I want it as a base, and then let my kids install whatever they want from FlatHub.
Let me ask you this. There was a time, my first draw to Red Hat, my first draw to Fedora was when Red Hat and Fedora split. And at that time, I found it in my IT career incredibly useful to be running Fedora on my laptop and my desktop, because it gave me kind of an insight into what was coming down the track with Red Hat. These days, they're two so different, entirely different projects. They're not even close to the same thing. By design, but and since that time, Red Hat has done other things, like if you want to do that, run CentOS, and that's basically what you'd get, kind of a deal, right? At the same time, because they both have similar philosophies, because Fedora's biggest funders is still Red Hat, there's obviously some overlap. Do you find yourself, as you're moving your servers over to Red Hat and you're moving, essentially the family over to Fedora, do you find any domain knowledge that translates between the two that's been helpful to you?
I mean, I think it's too early to tell for Silverblue. I also don't think Silverblue is going to transfer over a lot, just because aside from generic Linux understanding how systemd works or whatever it is, you're not interacting. Like, I'm not doing DNF install, and I'm not doing that level of interaction with the operating system. So from that perspective, it's still going to be GNOME software, or I guess in Budgie's case, they like Discover, which is the store that replaces GNOME software. But either way, it's a store that people will go and download the whatever applications they want from. So from that perspective, no, I don't think there is anything, because that's not how I get applications on RHEL-based systems personally. So I don't think so. But from Fedora, I guess, from the perspective of, like, sure, I know how to set up remote logging and all that sort of stuff if I wanted to. But again, my wife administers her own computer. She got comfortable with Fedora, doesn't even really know that it's called Fedora. She's just, when I asked her which one she wanted, she's like, put that one on there. And she pointed at the last Fedora machine she had. So she picked it. That's what she wanted. And then when it came time for doing her friend's machine, I said, well, what do you want me to put on your friend's machine? She said, put the same one as I got. I'm like, okay. So I'm accidentally deploying Fedora.
What was it that drew your wife to Fedora?
I have no idea.
That didn't catch you curious? Like, what?
Not really. She probably can't really enumerate it anyways because, like I said, it's got GNOME software, and that's familiar because Endless has it. And when I set it up, I port over Firefox's profiles and stuff like that, and she knows how to install her extensions and Bitwarden and all the rest of that. So, like, Steam works the same, Firefox works the same, and those are pretty much what she lives in.
Do you see yourself because it seems like there might be some opportunity to automate some of this a little bit more than you originally had with Endless, either by way of, doing like a Kickstart thing or Ansible or whatever else. Do you see that being something that you'd leverage to just make like the Ovens distro, the Ovens household distro kind of a thing?
That's an interesting idea. I'll have to put some thought into that when the time comes to replace Endless on things. Like, it's still functioning fine we run it on the projector machine, and she runs it in the kitchen with her kitchen computer and stuff like that. It would be a perfect fit in both cases because all it has to do, like, the projector has to fire up and launch a browser, and so does the one in the kitchen. So, I mean, from that perspective, the only catch is the one in the kitchen has been notoriously difficult to get working properly with the touchscreen because the touchscreen will work, but then doesn't work in Firefox or Chrome properly. So when you go to like drag your finger to scroll, it will highlight the text, and that requires you to do a little bit of jumping around in the terminal. And so I wonder whether that would be permanently solved in Fedora, because every once in a while it just forgets that setting, and then I have to go into history and because it's like once every 4 months or something, it forgets it. And then I have to go into history because I barely ever do this thing. So maybe Fedora would solve that. I don't know.
So I think I missed a step here. I was under the impression it was only on your one laptop. Have you rolled this out to the kitchen computer?
No, you went from, hey, can you automate this and make it the Ovens thing? And I was saying, oh, that seems like it's possible. I would use it to replace where Endless currently is.
Mm-hmm. Is it going to be as Endless computers fall down, then they will come back alive with Fedora? Or is it a function of if you decide this is the way, the truth, and the light, you're going to go through and everything gets ripped out and gets replaced with Endless or with Fedora?
You know me. There's a level of pragmatism involved here. Like if it's currently working, I've got other things that I need to pay attention to. 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624. The email live@asknoahshow.com. Could you ever see yourself using an immutable distro from the standpoint that you can't accidentally break it, or is it, or in your role and in what you do, that's what ZFS is doing for you to make sure that you can go back in time? I actually thought, I wonder why the Red Hat CSB isn't based on Silverblue, because that would make a ton of sense for the technical people that wanted to get in and tinker around with it. They have the option, but at the same time, for the non-technical people, you don't have to worry about them breaking it.
So wait, you're saying that they should use?
Yes, I think it would be a good idea for the CSB to be Silverblue.
Interesting.
Like I said, if you're a technical person, Red Hat allows you to go through the process of administering your own machine. So if you're going to do that and you're a technical person, you just bake it into the Silverblue by adding it to the RPM OS tree. And if you're not a technical person, perfect, you can't break it.
Huh. That's fascinating. We'll see if this actually comes to fruition, but we had talked about potentially getting somebody to talk more about CSB, just because it's kind of an interesting thing. Like, when you're a software company, you have the ability to say, hey, use our software, and you have the ability then to customize your software because you're a software company, which is not a boat that everybody finds themselves in.
Yep, that's true. For people that don't know, CSB is the corporate standard build.
And that's what's used internally at Red Hat. So you could, if it works out anyway, make like the Ovens standard build, and I get it, it wouldn't necessarily come into play until after the other things that are currently working are no longer working. But it sounds like there's a potential plan to have that ready to go.
It's definitely an interesting idea for me.
That's gonna be interesting. Why Fedora over Arch? Because it seems like if you were going, because I know you like to keep things kind of similar, and it seems like if Endless was going to fall over or was no longer going to be the thing, why not an Arch-based thing?
I'd have to figure out how to do immutability. It's baked into the OS. Again, it's like which problem are you going to spend your time on?
Yeah. Interesting. So this is really fascinating. Do you have the so you have loaded on one laptop? Where's that going to go? Where's its first destination?
My youngest son, he walks around with his laptop listening to his audiobooks out the speakers for reasons unknown, and so he likes to just pace around or walk outside with his laptop. So I thought, this is a good rugged little laptop. It'll do well with that.
Huh. And because the thing that laptop was originally doing, or the alternative that laptop was originally doing, that's been replaced by something else.
I'm not sure that I understand the question.
So you had one of those model laptops, and then the hinge busted, and then you replaced it, and then you got another one.
Yeah. So the other machine was replaced with a relatively cheap machine that has 8 gigs of RAM, where these ones have 4. So it is happily serving the purpose that it was bought for, the other machine. And so this one ends up being, I don't want to say a spare, but one that will not be used for the original purpose.
Okay. Huh. So we feel like we have everything. So we've got Fedora Silverblue going on the front end, and then still the migration over to RHEL-based stuff on the server side.
Oh, that's largely completed. There isn't much to do there. I won't move my NAS. I think it's a good idea to have like a plurality of OSs. So I have my NAS as Ubuntu, and the backup NAS is Arch, and then so I have a scattering of operating systems still, and I'll keep it that way.
Really, Ubuntu is kind of the best choice when it comes, if you're going to use ZFS, because it's baked natively into the thing, and they're also kind of at the forefront of OpenZFS too, right?
It is well suited for that. I like Arch because I baked in the ZFS boot manager so that everything on that machine is encrypted. So the plus and the minus is when it reboots, I have to actually use the IPMI to get into it to decrypt it, because even ZFS boot manager is encrypted. So the machine boots up and asks for it's annoying, but it's a safety feature. Is like it boots up and asks for the encryption password, and then you get the ZFS boot menu. Then it boots the operating system. The operating system says, "Hey, now I got to unlock your drives." And that was done by design because the backup server lives in the chicken coop. So if somebody walked away with it, you have to, by necessity, you have to unplug it. So, I'd rather just have it that way.
IPMI works reliably enough though that you're able to dig.
Oh yeah, yep.
Depends on the server, right? Because like HP is ILO, Dell is iDRAC. They're all kind of
so technically, right? It's the BMC in a. I think it's a Supermicro that I have.
Okay, so it is IPMI then. I think in Supermicro, right? That's their thing.
Yeah, IPMI is just a protocol. So
I see.
The ILO and the DRAC and things like that are running the IPMI protocol. It's just that's what those implementations are called.
They brand it differently. I'll tell you, one of the things that have you heard of? Is it not? I'm going to forget the name now, but the Raspberry Pi based BMC.
Oh, PiKVM?
Yeah, PiKVM. Have you played with that at all?
I did. The problem is, well, first of all, it's a secondary device, and second of all, you have to wire it in if you actually want to be able to do things like reboot things and stuff like that. And I have one. It's sitting in my closet. I used it for a time and found that it was not ideal for what I was doing for it.
I will tell you from my perspective, the wiring in wasn't really the end of the world. That I arrived at pretty quickly. Where I thought it fell down and rather hard was actually getting the video to transmit properly and display properly and all the things. And I still, like, from a conceptual standpoint, like it better than the built-in BMC because in some cases, I'm looking at you, Dell, they nerf the iDRAC, so it's a thing that just you can do things like you can view the thing, but you can't actually control it or do screen control, that sort of thing. You can get into some of the UEFI and set some of the settings. But you can't really control it unless you go with, and I forget what they name it, maybe Enterprise. But it works so much better than the Pi KVM, and that's the part that I struggle with a little bit. And I'm like, man, I wish I could have one thing that would, then I could swap the server and wouldn't have to change out the BMC. But alas, that doesn't seem to be a thing.
So I actually had really good experience. I built my data NAS and I used the ASRock boards. That was a surprisingly refreshing experience because most of them, you've used a ton of these, right? Those web interfaces. They all look like they're from the early 2000s. The ASRock one, they're like, no, man, we're going all in with like sliding transitions and like nice graphs. And I was actually a little bit envious when I handed it off. I'm like, I really like this interface.
No kidding.
Yeah, it was good.
Oh, that's really neat. Is ASRock owned by Asus or have some relationship to Asus?
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure they're their own thing.
Just an entirely separate company, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
I am a fan of both ASRock and Asus. I have yet to buy a machine that doesn't work well.
So what I liked about this board is you can put like a desktop Ryzen in it, which is what I did, and you can put either ECC or regular DDR4 in it.
And then handed it off to Dad.
Yep.
And then went home to your machine and said, I wish I had that one.
No. I patted it gently and said, I'm glad that you've been doing the job forever. You will continue until you die. You're stuck here.
Fair enough. But that just means it's time for Steve to get his new massive AI machine, which I'm sure is, right around the corner.
We'll see. Maybe the next bonus.
All right. So, Steve, as we wind down this week's episode, it is important that people have the ability to write in and ask us stuff. We're also putting together the idea of a 500 episode because we're going to be approaching 500 pretty soon, and we're kind of thinking about the Twin Cities. Drive down there, spend some time, invite some people out. So we should give people a heads up. If that's something you'd be interested in, we'd love to hear from you live at asknoahshow.com. Let us know. It doesn't have to be a firm commitment, but it'll give us kind of an idea of if nobody is interested or nobody would do it, then that tells Steve and I something. But it'd be a little bit of a trek for you. It'd be a little bit of a trek for me. But we found that Minneapolis is kind of a nice middle ground to meet up on, and there's plenty of stuff to do and plenty of places to hang out and that sort of thing. And so we would do our 500 episode live from Minneapolis, St. Paul, in person. And that does a couple of things. One is it gives us a nice place to do it, but then two, it allows you to participate in person if you wanted to come watch the show recorded live. Check out our self episode. It's one of the only ones that we do video for. You'll find that on our Tubes of the Ubes channel. Search Ask Noah Show. And of course, it's available in your podcast feed. It'll be the episode right before this one. The music in our ears means we're out of time. I appreciate you joining us. You can get the latest by going to podcast.asknoahshow.com. There you'll get the show notes, and you'll see not only all of the articles and references we used to make this show, but all the stuff that we weren't able to get to. We're back next week at 6 p.m. Central. AskNoahShow.com.